With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're now beginning our panel discussion on security operations, mitigation, preparedness, and exposure management. And I have with me on the panel Mr. Srinivas Kusarapu, who's the CISO for Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority. Thank you very much, Srinivas, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And on the panel, I'm also going to be in conversation with Mr. Amol Devanji, who's the Head for Systems Engineering, India and SAARC for Women.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask my first question of you, Srinivas, with your permission. And the one that I have for you is that in view of the evolving sophistication of attack surface and the ecosystem, how important is cybersecurity from the operations and automation point of view? Perhaps today more than ever before.
Yeah, basically now if you're looking at any of the operations like in banking or telecom or anywhere, we are finding a lot of attacks, ransomwares, viruses, everywhere in operational they want to disrupt the things. So in order to find out, earlier we used to have 1 or 2 incidents only. Nowadays, if you look at every second, we are finding a lot of attacks onto the systems. Some at endpoint level, some at sophisticated servers level. So they're penetrating onto the service. So they may be attacked or to be attacked. That kind of thing is there. So our operations to be protected by some of the tools, how we are going to protect our services is very, very important. So either we should have to have the protection layers. Now we have seen if you go to any airport or any kind of thing, we are finding the everybody is checked and we are not trusting anybody in the airport protocol. So similar way, any operations, we should have a perfect security layer to that. Thing is coming up. Earlier we are at a global level, connect anywhere and disconnect anywhere kind of things there. So our operations are global. So we should have to have the protection layer at every layer and every device level. So that kind of things we should have in the automation in the operation level to secure the things.
Thank you, Srinivas. Well, that's very beautifully put together. And I'm going to now take a point from there and come to you, Amol. So when we talk about securing it at every level, and data protection is something, and there are huge volumes of data that we're dealing with. What are your views on this, Amol?
Yeah, sure. So, interesting thing which Srinivas actually, spoke of layered approach to security, frequent attacks on endpoints on the data center. In fact, I was reading the other day on one of the surveys done by a prominent analyst, and it says there is an attack every 11 seconds, right? I mean, it's mind-boggling to see the number of attacks which have risen, especially since last 2 years. Now, I'm sure, the entire focus today is to look at security from the perspective of access, right? Because you no longer have a perimeter to defend, right? Your perimeter's definition is diminishing day by day. It's only become larger and larger, right? So you and the entire focus is there. But I'm coming from a perspective that attacks are going to happen, right? And you would have layered defenses, right? But still, bad actors will manage to creep in. Now, in such eventualities, right, what do you really have as a last line of defense, or how can you recover from it, right? So that's a perspective, that's a view I'm going to put forth here. backup in this case is your last line of defense, right? So assuming that bad actors sometimes will manage to trickle in and they will compromise your systems, there are a couple of capabilities which you need to have as part of your entire defense mechanism, right? Of course, on access side, you want to do a lot of things, which I'm not going to focus on. Maybe Srinivas will point it out further in his conversation. But this is a layered defense, right? Second is, of course, you need to bring the entire workforce as part of your security framework. You need to train them, make sure that they are abreast with the knowledge as to how to tackle some of these breaches. The other thing is, when this attack happens and when you have to restore from it, how quickly can you restore from it and how confidently can you restore from it? That's very, very important fact, and organizations need to gear up to a level where this is regularly tested out in form of maybe somewhere in automated, somewhere manual. Of course, this entire process can't be automated, but organizations should really gear up to do such kind of drills, right? Maybe on fortnightly basis or on monthly basis, because the attacks are only going to increase, right? And increasingly, you would need to have not only the layered defense, but also they'll need to think about from their organization's perspective, what should be my posture. And NIST, for example, lays out some guidelines. There are things like zero trust architecture, which is a buzzword, right, in the industry today, and a lot of vendors and even organizations are talking about how to reach there, right? So every organization should evaluate what is the objective they are trying to solve and build your defense accordingly. And no doubt in all this, data protection plays a key role. Like I said, it's the last line of defense for eventuality, and eventuality is going to happen. I mean, you can't stop bad actors from creeping in. I mean, again, for sake of repetition, I'll give you one more statistics that there are maybe daily, there are millions of new malwares being manufactured, right? And with all the AI, ML, and the entire effort to stop them, is not enough, right? So even if we assume that 99% time we'll be able to stop them, there will be still thousands of malware which are left undetected and unprotected from, right? So that's a statistic which everyone should be aware of. So goes back to what I said, bad actors will creep in. You will need to kind of figure out how to restore from them quickly.
Well, that's actually very nicely put together in terms of how we can create a mitigation strategy and what all needs to be done. And while bad actors will act and do their bit, there is also something that we call as the right approach to data protection. And when we talk about data protection, it's across the entire value chain in a distributed architecture, across multiple cloud based orchestrations. So, Srinivas, with your permission, I'd like to come to you to ask you what is your view about the right approach to data protection, especially with ransomware and malware in mind?
So, good question. Nowadays, we are seeing data protection and multi-tenant cloud. So we are observing. When we discussed with most of the cloud service providers, when we discussed with them, what they are saying is we were providing these tools to migrate to the various clouds, and we build some native tools on the cloud to protect the data, and we have all the certifications whatever required, all these kind of things they're saying. But when we come to the implementation part, we observe a lot of gaps are there still. And recently had discussion with one of the prominent cloud provider in India, especially in India. When we asked where is your disaster recovery drill, they're not having. And in the same city, they build the things and including disaster things that built over there. But when something happens to that city, where is the data protection for over there? That kind of questions will be raised, and later they told we are building the things in the future, and we're going to come up with that. And we now we are enabled with the other stacks and other tie-ups with other city data centers to provide the services. That kind of things we are getting, because when we understand the data, transactional data, something goes wrong in the data entire, in case of banking or manufacturing or e-governance, it is very, very difficult. That kind of things we should have to be very careful when selecting the a cloud related interoperability in the data environment. That is number one. And coming to data protection thing, uh, right from the data creation and data sharing and data in transit or data at rest, at every level we require the data protection. And for that, when you access the data, access controls how you are given, because we everybody is mentioning infrastructure as service, platform as service, software as service, all these kind of things are they're explaining. But when you look at one organization, let us take, I'm a manufacturer, I have multiple technology stacks, and my responsibility has been shared between various stakeholders. So in that case, what is my responsibility? What is my vendor's responsibility? What is the hosting, the cloud hosting people's responsibilities? These kind of data controls, how the controls has been given, and how they're accessing and using the data is very, very important.
Hmm.
And that kind of role-based access controls should be put in place. Some are there, but how they're handling is very, very important in the data protection environment. And coming to the Indian context, in the Indian context now, as of now, we are not having the a GDPR kind of thing as EU. But in IT Act itself, in IT Act, we are mentioning one of the important aspect is called SDPI, Sensitive Data Protection Protection thing. So which holds personal identification information. So how they are storing that kind of data is very, very important. And another one is if you look at various regulators like Reserve Bank of India or Ministry of IT or SEBI or RBI or PFRDA, we in every guidelines they have already mentioned that data should be reside transactional data and KYC related data, otherwise settlement kind of data or payment kind of data, how they are storing in India, and how what are the data has been transferred to the other nations to perform the settlement kind of thing. That protection is very, very important to analyze the data and to get the various aspects of it. So
Absolutely.
these are the few aspects we should have to consider when interoperable clouds and data protection context.
Yeah, and that's very pertinent and quite powerful, the course. So I'm going to bring the same question to you, Amol. What are your views on this?
See, you know, hybrid is, the need of the hour, and at least in my experience, I've seen almost all the large enterprises have adopted it in some form of other, right? And now you'll need to appreciate the fact that the IT or IT ops is not, I mean, it's built with legacy, right? I mean, you start off with something and you continuously keep on evolving, right? Earlier, you'll take example of a bank. You possibly 20 years back you would have seen large Unix systems as part of their infrastructure, right? All RISC-based, mission critical information systems, running, core banking applications, whatever, right? Then, things progressed, slowly, concepts of cloud crept in. Then, people moved towards cloud, private clouds. Now people are looking at adopting hyperscalers, or, what we call as AWS, Google's, and, Microsoft's of the world, right? And then the entire uh, concept of how an application is to be built is also changed. Earlier, you used to follow a certain design pattern while building an application. Now you are adopting newer design patterns. You are building applications as microservices, right? Take for example Netflix, right? All are microservices. In fact, Netflix popularized that concept of microservices. So with all this in mind, what I'm trying to say is that gone are the days when you used to deal with only one production platform or two production platforms within your realm of data center. Right now that entire notion has changed. Now you have suddenly a lot of production platforms to take care of, and you suddenly need to secure them. You also need to protect the data which lies in this distributed setup, right? So obviously, like I said, all the enterprises or organizations have phase wise adopted as their business demanded, right? So people are bound to have legacy, and they're bound to have legacy solutions as well, right? So if I look at from data protection perspective, or protecting the data in all these silos, the obvious answer is, if you had this one magic tool which could do everything, it would have been great. But then in practically it is not possible, right? Because like I said, you have legacy and you have to live with it till it dies its natural death, and it makes business sense for you to have another platform or an application to replace that, right? So people are going to end up having different solutions for different clouds as well, right? And practically that's what I see. People have something else on-prem, and then they suddenly started consuming cloud services. For that, to protect the data, they are moving to newer solutions. So this entire concept of modern data protection has started to resonate with a lot of CIOs and IT leaders, right? And a lot of them are looking at two-prong approach or three-prong approach, whatever suits their business requirement. So you start off looking at all these modern workloads with different lens, with possibly a tool like Veeam, for example, which is able to protect not only your cloud workloads but also on-premise clouds, be it built with any hypervisor. I mean, it could be VMware, it could be Microsoft, or it could be Nutanix AHV, or it like I said, clouds like AWS, Google, or Azure, or even things like Kubernetes, which are modern platforms to build your next generation applications, right? So that's where you should start looking at a different from a different lens and evaluate what options do you have. And also, I forgot the most important thing: SaaS services, right? The most popular one is O365. Big or small, today all organizations are moving to O365, right? So and one very big notion or misconception I would say people have is, since it's a SaaS service, my data stays protected. But guess what? It is not, right? You need to take care of that data too, because it's your responsibility. I mean, I'm just going back to what Srinivas said, right? Everyone needs to be aware of their responsibilities. Even in a cloud model, it's a shared responsibility, right? Microsoft as a provider, or Google as a provider, or AWS as a provider has boundaries of what they are going to give you as service, right? Ultimately, your data is your responsibility, which you need to take care of, right? So again, reiterating that all this explosion of various production platforms, right? You need to have a solid strategy as to with my legacy tools, what am I going to do moving forward? What is my platform of choice to protect this data, right? And you need to look at possibly a sort of a single tool for this modern platforms.
Well, thank you, Amol, for that. I'm just going to build on to what you've just outlined for all of us. When we talk about all the modern tools and everything that is available to us, there comes this one big question about complexity versus capability. And what, in your views, should CISOs and DPOs do to find the right balance between capability versus complexity?
See, I mean, I'm sure, uh, possibly I'm not in a position to really to advise the CISOs and the IT leaders. I'm sure even Srinivas would agree with me. There is a popular concept called as keep it simple, right? And I'm a firm believer in it. With whatever problem I face in my personal life as well as professional life, right? And I think so that holds true even for the complex problems, right? So of course, there are many capabilities, there are many products, there are many solutions today available in market, right? But what is a business problem you are trying to solve, right? Ultimately, everything you want to implement is to solve a business particular problem, a business problem, right? So with that backdrop, and as far as possible, try and untangle the complexity, right? That's what I would practice and preach, right? I mean, of course, saying this is pretty simple, keep it simple, untangle the mess. But in practicality, like I said, everyone has a legacy. There are a lot of dependencies. So, choosing the balance becomes sometimes a very, very tedious job, right? And finding, what's right for you can be tough. But like I said, focus on the business problem, right? Focus on what you are trying to solve. Don't get swayed by the capabilities today, or I mean, more capabilities don't mean anything unless and until they're not solving your problem, right? So that's what my take would be.
Absolutely. Keep it simple. Well,
Keep
while
it simple.
keeping it simple, Srivnas, I want to come to you. And the question I have for you is, when we speak about capabilities and keeping it simple, to what extent adding tech-enabled capabilities is fiscally and strategy-wise prudent when compared to the benefits involved?
Sorry, for me, continue.
Yes, yes.
Can you repeat once, please?
Certainly. My question to you was that while we're discussing the whole, strategy about capability versus complexity, and Amol has made a point that, we should keep it simple. To what extent do you think that when we add tech-enabled capabilities, how fiscally prudent and how strategy-wise effective is it when we compare it to benefits?
Yeah, especially when we are building a strategy related to the business. So in that context, many times, many organization misses the addition of the cyber security into that strategy. Many times we have seen in many of the organizations. Every strategy, if you are building something, there should be technology aspect, there should be the cyber security aspect should be there. That is earlier used to be miss. Nowadays, they are including in many areas because strategic decision. The loss is more than the investment has been decided in the strategy. That's why most of the strategies now including the cyber security into their business. That is the number one. And as a part of that strategy, some related to tools, some related to the capabilities for the security teams, including security operations, network operations, then security tools, portfolios, those kind of things has been taken. and especially in the banking and insurance context, uh, uh, they have been introduced a concept called 10% of the investment should go into the IT and cybersecurity. That kind of things also came into the picture nowadays. So that kind of strategic decisions has been taken into any business context. That is number one. And then the capability part, I think last 3-4 days onwards, I was part of many inspections and reviews and audits. In that, especially I reviewed every organization now invest into the awareness and capabilities and trainings of the all employees, not one, because the any incident starts from the endpoints, and the weakest link is the human resource. So that link they are now strengthening with the various capability trainings, tools, those kind of things they're giving to their human resource. That kind of investment that they're getting into the cyber security. That's number one. And number two, earlier we used to observe CISO teams are not there, and security operations centers not there, and SOC centers, NOC centers, the SIEM, those kind of things are not there. Now, a complete complex solutions along with the tools are coming up to assess the things, and not after getting the incident. Before getting the incident, they're able to protect and detect any incidents or any attacks onto any of the system has been built into the business organizations. Because now everything, every critical infrastructure, if you're observing the electricities, transcos, gencos, or e-governance, or stock exchanges, banking, everywhere, those are very critical infrastructure for the nation, for their business. Now they want to build secure things in the initial stages itself. Security architecture, they're doing initial stages itself. And coming to the application parts, earlier application parts has been done and deployed into the servers, then clouds or anyway, then they used to perform the BAPTs on that. Now in the coding itself, and the static code itself and dynamic coding, development stage and the analysis stage itself, they're including security aspect. That's what the SecOps and the DevSecOps has been introduced, and dynamically CI and CD has been put in place to find out any issues in the early stage itself. That kind of strategy has been introduced into the business organizations as a part of capabilities, as a part of strategy, as a part of technology.
Absolutely. So, all in all, I can understand that, the threat scenario or the attack scenario has evolved from what it used to be over a period of time. We've seen socially engineered attacks, so we've seen insider threats, and we've seen different strategies of mitigating this. And I'm going to come to you, Srinivas, to quickly tell me about, while we see that there is a whole new generation of attacks coming in, what are the challenges that a CISO or a DPO will face? And what's your guidance in avoiding this, while, there's one thing that we're trying to do at the end of the day, which is delivering security at scale?
So as a CISO, still in few of the organizations, CISO is only designated kind of thing, and there should be always firefight should be done between the CTO team and CISO team. That kind of thing should be there. Organizations. So and we should have the coordination between the technology team as well as the infrastructure, this CISO team. Then only we are going to find out the gaps in every stage, every level in the organization, because IT team is implement a lot of things into the organizations, right from the access controls, devices, infrastructure, network layers, data center level, applications level, database level. At every level, they are going to implement the things. And as a part of a CISO team, we are going to find out the gaps in that system. At every level, we would like to find out the gaps in every implementation stage. If they are able to strengthen their gaps, strengthen what the CISO team has been find out, and if they implemented those the gaps, then only we are going to strengthen the business operations. Otherwise, at people are ready to attack if they found a small gap in the air gap in the system. They're ready to attack under the systems. Because they're ready, they know this is a gap. Immediately they're ready to attack under the systems. That kind of things are there, and that is going to disrupt entire service service of the organization. So in order to secure those kind of things, we require tight coupling between the technology team and the security team. That kind of coordination, relationship, and collaboration should be there between these two teams.
Thank you, Srinivas. And while we are talking about the air gaps that exist in the system, and yes, we are going to be under attack. That's one gospel of truth. Amol, my parting question to you, because I do have a view on the clock, is, how do you recover quickly from security disasters like this?
Yeah, absolutely great question, Kanchi. Like we said, bad actors are going to come in, be it a social engineered attack or, whatever way they have managed to break the security perimeter and get in. Now, question is, how do we recover, right? Now, like we discussed, backup or your data protected data is your last line of defense. Now, number one thing is it's very important for an organization to have pristine copies of data. Now, the first thing when an attacker comes in, he will also encrypt your backups, right? So he will make sure that you have nothing to recover from, so that he can demand money from you, right? So that's where this pristine copy of data comes into picture. So what I simply mean by pristine copy is the data which is not changed or which cannot be changed, right? So we call it immutable data, right? So basically you should create immutable data copies within your data center, and also a copy which is air gap between your data center, maybe in your DR site or in a cloud of your choice, right? So you should at least keep two such copies, or maybe three if you can really afford to do it. So we have this popular rule which is called 3-2-1-1-0. Now what it simply means is that at any given point in time you need to have 3 copies of your production data, right? The 2 denotes that you should have it on 2 different media. The 1 denotes that one of them should be offsite. The another one means that one of them should at least be immutable, right? And 0 means that you should be constantly checking for errors of the backup you take or the data you protect, because statistics have proven, right, more than half the number of times your recovery fails. So what is the use of backup if your recovery is really going to fail, right? So follow this golden rule of 3-2-1-1-0, right? Now how do you recover once you have an attack, and provided you have immutable copies on prem or whether it's on cloud, you should have an ability to create an isolated networking segment where you create a data lab or a sandbox. Now you can mount your application data there, or basically your backup data, the VMs there, and start scanning for potential malware. Now once they pass that, you can run certain scripts for many popular applications like SQL, Oracle. There are pre-existing scripts which you can just run to test it whether everything is working fine. You can also manually intervene, check if the data is clear to go, and then proceed to stage it further to production. Right now, all this can happen very, very quickly. So companies like Veeam, I mean, at Veeam, we've pioneered few technologies like, for example, Sure Backup. Sure Backup, guarantees you that your data, whatever you protect, is error free. Right? We provide things like data labs, with which you can just spin up your small sandbox quickly in an isolated network segment where you can mount the data directly, and you can just start it off. I mean, again, this is a very pioneering thing which Veeam came up with. From the backup itself, you can power off the VM and you can start your applications. Right? So you test it out there, and then you gradually move it to production. Right? So things like Sure Backup, things like instant recovery, and secure recovery is what Veeam pioneered. And I think so we can help any such customer scenario in quickly recovering back the data.
Thank you, Amol. That was brilliantly put together. And I've had this amazing conversation with both of you. So thank you very much, Srinivas and Amol, for joining me on this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we'd like to close this panel and move forward to the next one. Thank you.